We all know that feeling, right? Life throws a curveball, or maybe it's just the daily grind getting to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel that underlying hum of unease, you know, a real desire for things to just feel, well, better,
Yeah.
more comfortable, more secure.
It's such a fundamental human thing, isn't it? That drive for a sense of well-being, for stability. It's a powerful motivator in all of us.
But what if, like, our main focus wasn't just on trying to escape those uncomfortable moments?
Okay.
What if we could actually shift our experience of reality,
Mm-hmm.
from the inside out?
Yeah.
Could cultivating a certain kind of mindset be the key to transforming those feelings?
That's a really profound question. It
Mhm.
suggests we might have more agency, more power in shaping our own experience than we often think.
Yeah, that our internal state can really influence how we see the world, how we react to it.
Exactly.
And that's precisely what we're digging into today. We're exploring some personal reflections and practices, all aimed at fostering a more positive internal landscape.
Hmm.
Our goal is to understand how these specific daily habits, these practices, can help develop this positive mindset and hopefully lead to a more comfortable, more fulfilling life based on these shared experiences, of course.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So, one of the first things that, well, becomes pretty apparent is the mind's tendency to dwell. You know,
Yeah.
we can find ourselves revisiting past problems, replaying negative stuff almost on like autopilot.
It's like the brain has these default negative pathways, doesn't it?
That really does, well-worn grooves.
Absolutely. You get caught in that spiral, that negative thinking, without even consciously choosing it. The source material we're looking at here talks about finding a path toward clarity and peace amongst all that mental noise.
Right.
How do we even start? How do we step onto that path?
Well, according to these experiences, the journey really begins with intentionally bringing in some daily practices, things that help us become aware of those patterns.
Aware and then gently redirect them.
Exactly. Redirect those ingrained thought patterns.
Okay, so a few specific practices are highlighted. Let's start with meditation. Now, for someone who hasn't really tried it, it might seem a bit abstract. How does it help bring this clarity?
The emphasis here seems to be on cultivating present moment awareness.
Being here now.
Right. By focusing your attention, maybe just on the breath, meditation creates a kind of space, a space where worries about yesterday or anxieties about tomorrow, they tend to lose their grip.
So it's not about eliminating the thoughts entirely.
No, not necessarily. It's more about learning not to get swept away by them. You might, notice them pop up, but you're better able to just observe them without judgment, ideally.
That's an interesting distinction, yeah.
Yeah.
Not emptying the mind, but changing our relationship to our thoughts.
Right.
Okay, the source also mentions chanting the names of God. Now that phrase, it might land differently for everyone. What's the core idea behind that practice in this context?
Well, what's compelling here, I think, is the idea of connecting with something perceived as greater than oneself, regardless of specific spiritual beliefs, or even if someone isn't religious. The act of focused repetition, whether it's a traditional chant or maybe just a meaningful phrase or mantra, it can create a sense of connection.
Connection and maybe purpose.
Yes, purpose and inner strength, inner fortitude. It's a way to sort of focus your energy and intention, and that can be incredibly stabilizing.
I can see how that focused repetition could be really grounding, actually. Okay, next up is gratitude. We hear about gratitude a lot, don't we?
We do. It's quite popular now.
This source highlights its ability to shift our focus away from what's lacking towards what we already have. How does something seemingly simple, like just reflecting on the good, actually rewire our perspective?
It's a really powerful form of cognitive reframing. Basically, when we actively look for and acknowledge the good things in our
We
lives,
do tiny things.
especially the tiny things sometimes, we're essentially training our brains to notice and prioritize those positive signals more often. Studies have actually shown links between regular gratitude practice and increased levels of dopamine and serotonin.
Wow, the feel-good chemicals.
Exactly. The neurotransmitters associated with well-being. And journaling is mentioned as just one practical way to do it, make it more concrete.
Right, writing it down makes it a conscious effort.
Okay.
Then we have breath work, which sometimes feels a bit overlooked, maybe because it's so basic.
Possibly. It's always with us.
But the source calls its ability to stabilize emotions and ground thoughts astonishing. What makes our breath such a powerful tool?
Well, our breath is just so deeply intertwined with our autonomic nervous system. It's fundamental.
Okay.
So conscious, intentional breathing can directly influence our physiological state. For instance, certain techniques like deep diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, that can stimulate the vagus nerve,
The vagus nerve, right.
which plays a huge role in activating the parasympathetic nervous system. That's our body's relaxation response, rest and
So it
digest.
counters the stress response?
Precisely. It helps counter that fight or flight reaction, leading to calmer emotions and often much clearer thinking.
That's fascinating how direct that link is. Okay, the last of these core practices is the mirror method, or affirmations.
hmm
Looking at yourself in the mirror and affirming your worthiness, self-love. I imagine that can feel a little awkward for some people, maybe?
Oh, it definitely can feel unfamiliar, maybe even odd at first, as the source acknowledges.
Yeah.
But the principle behind it is about challenging that negative self-talk we all tend to have and cultivating self-compassion instead.
Talking nicely to yourself.
Essentially, yes, by consistently affirming positive qualities, expressing self-love, even if it feels a bit forced initially, we start to internalize those messages over time. It's about building a stronger, more supportive inner voice.
And the source points out, right, that the combined effect of all these practices, the meditation, chanting, gratitude, breathwork, affirmations, it encourages this focus on potential positivity.
Exactly. It's like building a multifaceted toolkit.
Yeah.
Each tool helps in its own way, but together they create a much more robust, positive orientation.
Okay, building that toolkit. Now, the source moves into something slightly different. The idea of surrender and trust. Specifically, surrendering to a higher power, however one defines that, and trusting the way life unfolds. Here's where it gets really interesting. How does this act of surrender, this letting go, contribute to that positive mindset we're aiming for?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this element of surrender can significantly reduce the mental burden, that constant feeling that we have to control everything.
Which is exhausting.
Incredibly exhausting. Believing in some kind of guiding force or just trusting the process of life itself, it can help quiet that harsh inner critic. You know the one.
Oh, I know the one.
And it fosters a more gentle, more loving inner dialogue. Psychologically, you could link this to concepts like acceptance, letting go of resistance, which in turn reduces cognitive load and frees up mental energy.
And the source suggests the outcome of this surrender can be pretty transformative, like difficult situations might actually dissolve or be replaced by opportunities for growth and comfort. That sounds almost magical.
Maybe less magic and more about shifting our perception of the challenges and our response to them.
Okay, explain that.
When we approach difficulties from a place of greater trust and acceptance rather than, say, intense fear or needing to control, we're less likely to be completely consumed by the negativity.
Right.
And that openness, that little bit of space, can actually allow us to see potential solutions or learning opportunities that we might have totally missed if we were stuck in high anxiety and resistance mode. It's a subtle shift, but really powerful.
A shift in perspective. Okay. To make this more concrete, the source shares some real-life examples. Let's look at the morning meditation ritual. Just 10 minutes daily. What's the impact of that consistency, even if it's short?
Well, even a short but consistent practice like that trains the mind. It trains it to be less reactive during the day.
Less knee-jerk reactions.
Exactly. It cultivates a kind of inner stillness, a baseline calm that lets us navigate the inevitable ups and downs with a bit more equanimity, rather than being immediately overwhelmed by whatever emotion pops up.
Okay. Then there's the evening gratitude journaling, the practice of noting, say, 3 things you're grateful for before bed. How does that evening ritual reshape perspective?
By consciously ending the day, focusing on the positive, on what you appreciate, you reinforce those feelings of abundance, of well-being.
Like setting the tone for sleep.
Kind of, yeah. It's like the final imprint on your mind before rest. And that can positively influence your overall mood, your outlook when you wake up. It steers your attention towards appreciation, not lack.
The source also mentions taking breathwork breaks during tough moments at work. Like just a minute of deep breathing for clarity. It sounds so simple. But what's happening there? What's the mechanism?
It goes back to what we discussed earlier, activating that parasympathetic nervous system.
Right, the calming system.
Yeah. That deep, conscious breath directly counteracts the physical stress response. It can lower your heart rate, reduce muscle tension, and crucially, it helps you access the more logical, rational parts of your brain that can get hijacked by stress.
So that brief pause.
That brief pause interrupts the impulsive reaction and creates space. Space for a more considered, thoughtful response instead of just reacting.
Okay. And the mirror affirmations that daily practice. The source notes it might feel odd at first, which we talked about, but highlights its impact on self-confidence, resilience. Why is that direct self-acknowledgement so potent, even if it feels strange?
It's a very direct way of confronting and starting to reprogram those ingrained negative self-belief.
Talking back to the inner critic.
Exactly. Consistent repetition of positive affirmations, even if they don't feel 100% true right at the beginning, can gradually, slowly rewire our internal dialogue. Over time, those affirmations can become more deeply internalized, and that fosters a stronger sense of self-worth, which in turn increases our capacity to bounce back from difficulties, our resilience.
Right. Okay. Finally, the practice of surrendering prayer, or maybe just setting intentions. Reinforcing that trust in a guiding force, reducing the need to control everything. How does that act of letting go provide such comfort?
This really brings up an important point, I think, about the human desire for certainty and control, which is often an illusion anyway.
Sure.
When we consciously acknowledge that, hey, there are aspects of life beyond our direct control, and we choose to place our trust in a larger process or a higher power, or simply the flow of life, it can genuinely alleviate the burden of feeling solely responsible for every single outcome.
Takes the pressure off.
Huge pressure off.
Yeah.
It cultivates a sense of peace, acceptance, reducing anxiety, and allowing us to navigate things with maybe a bit more grace.
So we've looked at these individual practices, meditation, gratitude, breathwork, affirmations, surrender, and how they work on their own. But what's really striking is how they seem to weave together,
Right.
support each other, creating this more resilient, positive, internal foundation.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. While each practice definitely offers unique benefits, their cumulative effect is, well, it's more than the sum of its parts.
Synergy.
Yes, exactly. Meditation cultivates presence, gratitude shifts focus, breathwork regulates emotions, affirmations build self-compassion, surrender fosters trust. Together, they contribute to a more positive, more accepting way of being.
Mm-hmm.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just like isolated techniques you pull out occasionally. They represent a more holistic approach to cultivating well-being and building resilience for, life's inevitable bumps in the road.
Absolutely. And as we've explored these experiences, these insights, the natural question, I guess, for you, the listener, is, so what does this all mean for you in your own life?
Yeah, and this raises a crucial point about, well, the universal applicability of these principles, really.
They're not just for certain people.
Not at all. Regardless of your current circumstances, whether things feel great or really tough right now, the core ideas we've discussed, cultivating presence, appreciating what you have, learning to manage emotional responses, nurturing self-compassion, finding some sense of trust. These are pretty fundamental to greater well-being for everyone.
Exactly. Whether you're navigating a big challenge or maybe just seeking a bit more inner peace, more contentment day to day, these are tangible tools, things you can actually try.
And what's interesting here is that these don't have to be huge, complicated, time-consuming commitments either.
Right, not hours a day.
No, even small, consistent steps. Just incorporating tiny bits of these practices can lead to noticeable shifts over time. It's the consistency that often matters most.
So, okay, to kind of bring it all together, the key takeaway here seems to be that these consistent daily practices, whether it's just a few moments of mindful breathing or a quick reflection on gratitude, a short meditation, maybe offering yourself a kind word in the mirror, or finding a moment of surrender. These aren't just fleeting feel-good activities.
They're more structural.
Yeah, they have the potential to fundamentally reshape your mindset, your internal landscape,
Yeah.
and transform your experience of reality,
Yes.
ultimately leading to more of that comfort, that fulfillment we all kind of seek.
And at its core, it really seems to come down to fostering a kinder, maybe more loving relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
That inner connection, that self-compassion becomes the bedrock, the foundation from which you can navigate all of life's complexities with, hopefully, greater resilience and grace.
It's about recognizing that the comfortable, fulfilling life you desire,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't solely about changing your external circumstances,
Yeah.
right? It's also maybe even primarily about nurturing the right internal environment.
And learning to trust the unfolding of your own journey.
Yeah, precisely.
Which leaves us with maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. Think about just one small practice we discussed today, maybe one that resonated, even just a little bit.
Just one.
Just one. What if you were to intentionally incorporate just that one thing into your daily routine for the next week, even for a minute or two each day? What subtle shifts might you begin to